Welcome back. In this particular section, we are going to look at AWS Management Console. We will cover introduction to the AWS Management Console, navigating through AWS services using the AWS CLI, which is the command line interface, and then we will look at hands-on how to use AWS CLI to launch and manage EC2 instances. So let's get started. First, introduction to AWS Management Console. The AWS Management Console is a web-based user interface that provides access to manage all AWS services and resources. It is designed to help you launch and control various AWS services, monitor account activity, and manage cloud resources visually. Some of the key features of the AWS Management Console include unified dashboard. The console provides a single interface to manage all AWS services. You can navigate between different services, view billing information, and monitor usage. Then we have the search bar. Use the search bar to quickly find and access any AWS services like EC2, S3, Lambda. We have service shortcuts. Customize the dashboard by pinning your frequently used services for faster access. We have account and billing information. The console provides easy access to billing dashboards where you can track your AWS usage, set budgets, and view billing reports. The console also offers various tools like AWS CloudFormation Designer, EC2 Instance Connect, and AWS CloudShell, all of which help with deploying and managing cloud resources without leaving the interface. Let's look at navigating through AWS services. Now, AWS provides a wide variety of services that you can interact with via the management console. Here's how to navigate and access these services. First, through service categories. The service menu is divided into categories including compute, whereas EC2, Lambda, Elastic Beanstalk. You have storage, which consists of S3, Glacier, EBS. You have database like RDS, DynamoDB, Redshift, networking, which consists of VPC, Route 53, ELB, and security and identity, which is IAM, Cognito, and Guard Duty. We also have search for services using the search bar at the top of the console to quickly find the service you need. Type the name of the service and it will display relevant options. For example, typing EC2 will take you to the EC2 dashboard. And service dashboard. Once you select a service, you will be taken to the service's specific dashboard. The dashboard will provide information and options for managing resources within that service. Example, what we saw previously, the EC2 dashboard displays information about running instances, available AMIs, which are the Amazon machine images, elastic IPs, key pairs, security groups, and more. We have customizing the console. You can customize the console to make navigation easier. We have pinned services where you can pin frequently used services to the top bar for quick access. And we have resource groups. Create and manage your resource groups, which allow you to group related resources for easier management. Next, let's look at using the AWS CLI, which is the command line interface. The AWS CLI command line interface, which is completely opposite of AWS Management Console, just FYI, is a powerful tool that allows you to interact with the AWS services using commands in a terminal or command prompt. It is an essential tool for developers and system administrators who prefer scripting and automation over the web-based management console. Some of the key benefits of using this AWS CLI is automation. You can automate repetitive tasks such as launching EC2 instances, managing S3 buckets, or creating RDS databases. Also for scripting, create shell scripts or batch files that can perform complex AWS tasks in sequence. It's cross-platform. The AWS CLI is available for Windows, macOS, and Linux. Direct service access. Interact directly with AWS APIs which can be faster than using the management console. Now let's look at setting up the AWS CLI. So we'll be doing some hands-on in this particular case because we'll have to first install the AWS CLI. We'll then look at how to configure the AWS CLI, and then we'll look at some basic AWS CLI commands. Setting up the AWS CLI. Now, first step, as I mentioned, was to install the AWS CLI. You can just search for AWS CLI in your favorite browser, and it will take you to that AWS CLI webpage. Here you have documentation, tools, release notes, bunch of different stuff. You can go through the website if you want to, or on the right side, if you're using a Windows, you can download and run this. On Mac, you can download this. In Linux, you can download this. So I'm going to go, since I'm using a Mac, I'm going to download the Mac OS package. So once it's downloaded, you can just double click on this and follow the steps. Continue, 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 agree, select your destination, what type of installation you want, installation type, how much space it will take. And once the installation is complete, it's going to give you the summary that the installation was successful. And then I'll go ahead and close it and move to trash. I don't need the installer anymore. Now once this is done, you need to configure the AWS CLI, which is the second step, which is configuring the AWS CLI, and to use your account credentials. So I'm going to open terminal. And here I am going to say AWS configure. This will prompt you to enter some of your AWS credentials. First, it will ask you for your AWS access key ID. To get this AWS access key ID, you need to go to your AWS Management Console. On the top in your account, click on Security Credentials. Inside this, there will be a section for creating access keys, and here you can say create an access key. It's not recommended for root users for access key, but I'm just using this account for now. And it creates an access key and secret access key here. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go back and paste it here. Next, it's going to ask me for AWS secret access key, which is this one here. I'm going to copy this, paste it here. Then it's going to ask me for default region name, US East -1. And then it's going to ask me for default output format. I'm going to use JSON for this. So that's it. That's your basic configuration. Next step is basic AWS CLI commands. Let's look at some of the commands. So if I want to see all the S3 buckets, I can say AWS S3 ls. And since I have not created anything, it's going to give me empty. Next, let's clear this out first. Next, I want to launch an EC2 instance. AWS EC2 run -instances -image ID, image -id, and I'm gonna give the name image ID, which is AMI, let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, whatever it is. And I'm gonna say I want to create one instance, and then what instance type I want. Instance type is, let's say I want t2.micro, and then if what is the key name, key pair that I want, so that is by key --key -name, and let's say my key pair is what I want to call it. So this will launch an EC2 instance for me. And if you see an error occurred while calling run instances operation, the image ID does not exist. So since we have not created this AMI, it will give me this error. But we'll look at it in our hands-on experiment on how to do this. You can look at all the other commands in the documentation for AWS CLI. So that kind of gets you ready for our hands-on project, and we have set up our AWS CLI on your machine. If you have any issues, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. Let's jump into the hands-on exercise. using the AWS CLI to launch and manage EC2 instances. In this particular case, we're going to just follow these steps where we'll initially set up AWS CLI. If you didn't do it in the previous section, you can do it here. Then launch an EC2 instance. Then we're going to look at check the status of the instance from the CLI. Then we'll SSH into the EC2 instance. We'll look at stopping and terminating the instance. And finally, we'll look at automating EC2 instance launch with a shell script. So let's get started and dive in the hands-on exercise. So let's begin. In this hands-on exercise, you will learn how to use the AWS CLI to launch and manage EC2 instances. This process demonstrates how to automate resource management using command line tools. So first step, which is set up AWS CLI. Now before you start, ensure that you have installed and configured the AWS CLI with your AWS credentials. We did that in the previous step. So if you have not yet, go through that and make sure your AWS CLI is installed. Next step is launch an EC2 instance. Now first, we have to, if you remember, when we created our EC2 instance in the previous section, we went ahead and we said launch instance, and here we gave the name, we selected what type of AMI I want, we went to the instance type, we created a key pair, we also created security groups. So that was all created for us automatically. But what if you want to do this using command line? So let's go ahead, and first step is identify the Amazon machine image or AMI that you want. For this example, let's use the Amazon Linux AMI. Now to run this AMI, we can use this AMI ID here directly, or we can run this command AWS EC2 describe images owners Amazon dash filters that I need to use to describe the different images, where I'll say name equal to name, and values, the ones that I'm interested in is AMZN dash AMI dash HVM. These are the Amazon Linux machines. Dash star dash AMI dash, I think it's X underscore 86 is X86 underscore 64 dash GP2. If you look at this one here, probably will have the same form kind of filter. So this will give me an error here. Let's try one more time. What did I miss? Oh, instead of C2 is what I wanted to say here. I said EX2. Run this, and we'll get our AMI image ID. So there's an AMI image ID here. This is what I'm interested in. It will show me all the different ones. So I'm going to just make sure that I can just pick it up from here. If you see here, it's available here too. So I can just use this here, this image ID. So just take a note of this here, and then I'm going to just quit this here, clear this. So now I have my AMI image ID that I want to use. Next thing I want to do is launch the EC2 instance. Now use the following command to launch an EC2 instance. So first step, the actual command is AWS EC2. This time make sure there's no typo. Run instances is the command, and inside here I will pass the image ID for the AMI. And now if you remember your AMI ID, or I can just get it out down from here, which is AMI dash 0182 F373 E66F89C85. That's my AMI image ID. And next, so depending on what it shows on your interface, you can use that, or you can just use it from above when we gave the command to list all of them. And instance type that I want, which is instance type here, is what I'm going to select. Instance type, okay, let's make sure I have my, is t2 dot, I'm going to make it a little bit, dot micro. Next, it's asking me for next thing that we want to give is the key name, which is the key value pair. Now for this, I have not created a key value, or I don't have any key value pairs right now, if you look at it. So what I can do is I can create a key value pair. I can say create new key value pair. I'm going to give a name here. I'm going to say my key pair, RSA PAM create key pair, and it asks me to download. So once it's downloaded, I'll make sure that is available. So that name is my key pair. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say give the name my key pair. In the previous section, we created a key pair. If you want to use that one, you can use that. And then finally, I need to provide the security groups that I want to use for this. So I am going to call it my security group, which I have not yet created. So make sure that your image ID is whatever image ID, the ID of the AMI to launch. Make sure your instance type is T2 micro for free tier, and key name is the name of the SSH key that you created. And for security group, we'll have to create a security group that can be used here, which is, in this case, I've created this my security group which doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to go to the security groups section, and I'm going to create a new security group, and I'll say the name of this particular security group, let's go here, my security group, allow SSH access to developers, this VPC, use that, all traffic, whatever it is, leave it that way, create the security group. Allow SSH access to developer. This is just a description, so I can just say my security group for AWS CLI. So create security group, and it will create my security group, which is called my security group. Now I can go back to the AWS CLI and run this command. So this command will return details about the newly launched instance, including the instance ID, which is inside here, instance ID. This is the instance that it created. Now, if you want to check the status of this, I can copy this here, clear this out, and to check the status if it's running or not, you can say AWS EC2 describe instances, instance IDs, and pass the instance ID of that you copied. Will run, and it will give you the status of that particular instance of what all different things it's using. You can just go through it, and you'll say state is running. I can always go here and go to the EC2 dashboard and look at my instances, and if you see this one, just quit, and you see I0020, this is the one that is running right now. That's the only one that I have because I've deleted everything before. So now you've successfully created a EC2 instance using AWS CLI, and you have also, from our steps, check the status of the instance. Next, SSH into the EC2 instance. Now we have done this before, where we have SSH'd into the EC2 instance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run that same command again. First, let's clear this out, and I'm going to say SSH minus I. This was our hands-on in the first chapter. Now I have, let's see, let me go to desktop if I'm not on desktop, and on that I have that my key pair that we just created, and I'm going to go there and say this my key pair dot pem, and I want to say ec2 dash user, that's my username, at, now this IP address that I probably could have gotten it from the description, but I'm just going to go and jump into my instances here, and then If you even here, once you're in this instance, you can go to connect and you can get the SSH command here. See, this was my address and I can just put it over there and run it. I think I forgot to do the chmod, which I also did in the previous one, so it might not work. So I'm just going to kill it before even it gives me an error, and make sure that I give this error, I mean give this command. So that's good, and then I'm just going to copy this here. So it's going to ask me to continue this, so I say yes, and it will give me access to the SSH. Now this was pretty straightforward because we've done this before. Now that I have access to this, you can go ahead and run your commands directly on this particular EC2. I'm going to exit out of here and clear it out, which kind of completes our step for which SSH into EC2 instance. Next thing is stopping and terminating the instance. So what I can do here is I can go and say AWS EC2 and I can say stop instances. Let's make sure it's running. So I'm going to go back to let's go back to EC2 dashboard. I have this one instance which is running. Now I'm going to go here and say stop instances. Instance IDs. Now I've copied that before, but I don't know if I still have it, so I'm going to copy it from here, paste this here, and it says stopping instances. This is the one that is going to stop. So I'm going to go back here and refresh this, and you can see no matching instances found because I'm looking for running. If I remove this, refresh it, and you see it's stopping. So it's stopping that particular instance. Now if I want to completely get rid of this particular instance, I'll use the same thing, AWS EC2, and I'm going to say terminate instances. I'm going to just copy it from here. It's the same code, but I'm saying instance ID. This is the instance ID that I want to terminate. Run that, and it's just terminating instances, and it's going to say shutting down. So let's refresh this again, and if you see, shutting down. So this is how you can stop and terminate the AWS instances from AWS CLI. And finally, let's look at automating EC2 instance launch with a shell script. So in this case, we've seen all the commands that we did. You can do the same thing using a shell script where you can automate the process of launching an EC2 instance using a simple script. Here's an example script. I can just create a sample one and show you. So I am gonna say, so this is a bash script. Usually bash script starts with something like this, bin/bash, and inside this you'll have to define the variables that you need. For example, I'll say image ID is equal to whatever the AMI ID that you used, so you can give that here. Next, instance type, this is another variable that I like to define, where I always say t2.micro if I want to use the free tier one. Next is key name. I'm going to use the one that we created, which is my key pair. The security group that we created, I'm going to give that one equal to my security group. So these are some of the variables that I create. And now to launch an EC2 instance, if you remember that command, we can always go back here, run instances, this one. Copy this, paste it here, AWS EC2 run instances image ID. Now this, you can always use it here, and can take this and put it here saying $image ID. That's how you give variables. Instance type, I can, instead of using this, I can use the dollar, and then you can, for instance, sorry, I gave the instance type. Key name, you can give that key name that we created here, $key name. Security group, pass that security group here, and then I can just say echo EC2 instance launched successfully. So this can be my bash script. I can save it to my script here, and if I want to run this script, I can just go here and say, let's see the script here. So the script, I forgot that I need to name it as .sh. Add, perfect. Let's see now, and I can say .sh. Bad interpreter, no such file or directory. To have that, oops, sorry, /script. So I ran the command, the bash script, and ran my script and created an EC2 instance. Now if I go to my browser here, refresh it, or refresh it from here, I'll probably see one more. This was terminated because I just killed it previously in the previous example, and this is the new one that is running right now, which we created from the bash script. So this is an example of how you can create or automate your EC2 instance launch with a shell script. So that kind of wraps up our second chapter, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thank you.